My sister told the whole bridal party I'd be running the rehearsal dinner because she doesn't really have a life anyway. She booked me into a hotel as the help. But I was already 3,000 miles away, watching her wedding fall apart through a phone screen. And then the texts started coming in. Dozens of them, all caps. My sister screaming for me to fix what she broke. I'm Delia. I'm 29 and I work as a surgical scrub tech at a level 1 trauma center in Sacramento. I do 12-hour nights, sometimes 16 when we're slammed, and I'm good at my job in a way I'm not good at much else. But because I'm single, because I sleep during the day, because I don't post pretty things on Instagram and don't have a husband or kids or a house with a porch, my family decided a long time ago that my life is a placeholder, something that can be picked up and set down whenever they need a free pair of hands. The convenient one, the backup plan. The girl who'll always say yes because someone taught her that saying no makes you ungrateful. This past spring, they pushed it too far. They didn't ask me for anything. They just assumed, out loud, to a room full of people, that I'd give up an entire week of my life to serve at my sister's wedding. And for the first time in my whole life, I let them find out what happens when the convenient one stops being convenient. If you've ever been the family workhorse, the one everybody leans on and nobody thanks, you're going to want to stay for this. Hit that like button if you've ever been expected to drop everything because family helps family. Tell me down in the comments what you would have done if it were you. And subscribe with the bell on because this one gets messy before it gets good. Let's get into it. I have to take you back about a year and a half to understand why I did what I did. Not to the wedding. Before that. To my cousin's baby shower. The one my mother made me cater. I didn't agree to cater it. That's the thing. My mother volunteered me the same way she always does, by telling everyone it was already handled and then informing me afterward. Delia's so creative with food, she'd said in the group text. She offered to do the whole spread. I never offered. But by the time I saw the message, 14 people had already replied with heart emojis and I was apparently the caterer. So I spent 2 days off, my only 2 days off that month, in my mother's kitchen. I made a charcuterie board the size of a coffee table. I baked 3 dozen lemon bars from scratch. I rolled little spinach pinwheels and labeled everything for the gluten people and the dairy people and the one aunt who only eats white food. I drove the cooler 40 minutes in my own car with my own gas because nobody offered to chip in, and I set up every tray myself while the rest of them got their hair done. And during the shower, when my cousin opened her gifts and everyone gathered around her on the good couch, somebody handed me the baby. Not to hold for a sweet minute. To handle. The baby's older brother, a 3-year-old, named after a Marvel character, screamed for 40 minutes because his juice was the wrong color and I was the one who walked him around the backyard while my family cooed over onesies inside. I missed every game. I missed the cake, which was the cake I had picked up. When the photographer lined everyone up for the group photo, the nice one, the one that got framed, I was outside with the screaming kid and a sippy cup. I found out I wasn't in that photo when my mother posted it online with the caption, "My whole heart in one frame." I counted 22 people. I wasn't one of them. I'd fed all 22 of them, and I wasn't one of them. I ate a lemon bar standing over the sink at 11 that night, still in my apron, and I told myself the way I always did, that it didn't matter, that I was tired, that I was being dramatic. But something settled in me that night that didn't go away. A quiet, cold understanding. In my family's picture of itself, I was the staff, not the family. The staff. So when my younger sister got engaged that fall, I already knew, somewhere deep, what was coming. Her name is Cassidy, and she's 26, and she has been the golden child since before I can remember. Cassidy got the new car at 16. Cassidy got the destination birthday parties. When Cassidy cried, the whole house rearranged itself. She got engaged to a guy named Brett who sells commercial real estate and wears boat shoes in the city, and the engagement was treated like a national holiday. There were 3 parties before the wedding even had a date. The call came on a Tuesday in early March. I was on a stretch of nights, sleeping in my blackout-curtained bedroom at 1 in the afternoon, when my phone lit up the dark with my mother's face. I almost didn't answer. I wish I could tell my past self to not answer, but I picked up out of that old reflex, the one that's terrified of being the daughter who doesn't pick up. Delia, sweetheart, did I wake you? She knew she did. I won't keep you. I just have the most wonderful idea, and I had to tell you first. I sat up in the dark and rubbed my eyes. What's up, Mom? So you know the wedding is the last week of June, out at the vineyard, the gorgeous one in Sonoma. Well, Cassidy and I were talking, and you know how stressed she's going to be that week, and Brett's mother is just useless, bless her heart. And it hit me. You're so organized. You're so good under pressure. You do it every single day at the hospital. Who better to keep the whole week running than you? I was quiet. I knew this silence. It's the silence I always fall into right before I get steamrolled. What do you mean, keep it running? I said. Oh, just the little things, honey. Coordinating the vendors when they arrive, setting up the rehearsal dinner, making sure the welcome bags get to everyone's rooms, wrangling the flower girls so Cassidy doesn't have to. Keeping the timeline. You know, point person. You'd be perfect. You'd be a lifesaver. A wedding coordinator. They have those. People pay them thousands of dollars for exactly this. Because it is a full-time job that requires being on your feet for 14 hours straight, smiling at strangers. They wanted me to do it for free, for a week. The most exhausting kind of free. Mom, that's a coordinator's job. That's a real job. People hire that out. She laughed, light and dismissive, the laugh that means she's already decided. Oh, we're not paying a stranger a fortune to do something family can do. That's silly. And it's not like you have anything going on that week, right? You can swap your shifts around. You're so flexible at that place. I am not flexible at that place. The schedule is built 6 weeks out. Trading a single shift takes a chain of favors. Trading a whole week, in summer, when half the staff wants vacation, is close to impossible, and asking for it for a wedding. I'm not even in the party for would burn goodwill I actually need. It's not flexible, Mom. I'd have to use my PTO, the PTO I've been saving, and even then I'd have to beg people to cover nights, which is the hardest thing to cover. So use your vacation days. What better way to spend them than with family, celebrating your only sister? Delia, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing for Cassidy. You'd really make her feel like you couldn't be bothered? There it was, the pivot. The thing where my exhaustion becomes my selfishness. I felt it land in my chest the way it always does. That old hot guilt. I didn't say I couldn't be bothered. I said it's a lot to ask. There's a difference. Of course there's a difference, sweetheart, she said, soft now, soothing, like she was talking someone off a ledge instead of off the hook. I know you work hard. We all know how hard you work. That's exactly why you're the right person. Britt's family is paying for so much of this, and Cassidy is under so much pressure. The least we can do, the least our side can do is handle the details, and you're the only one with the skills. Your aunt can't, your cousins have their own little ones. It has to be you. It has to be you. The family anthem. I tried for 20 more minutes. Every single thing I said, she had an answer for, gentle as a knife. When I said I'd be running on no sleep, she said the wedding would energize me. When I said I might not be able to get the time off, she said she was sure my manager would understand for something so important. When I said maybe I could help with 1 or 2 things instead of the whole week, she said that wouldn't really take the load off Cassidy, would it? And didn't I want my sister to have the perfect day? And then, the way she always does, she ended it before I could end it. Anyway, I'll let Cassidy know you're on board. She's going to be over the moon. Oh, she'll cry, I just know it. Love you, sweetheart, get your rest. And the line went dead. I sat there in the dark with the dial tone in my ear. I never said yes. Not once. I said it was a lot to ask. I said I didn't know if I could get the time. And she heard yes, because she only ever hears what she wants. And now she was going to walk into the next room and tell my sister it was settled. I didn't sleep that day. I lay there until my alarm went off for my shift, and I got up and went to work running on fumes and stood at a table for 13 hours handing instruments to a surgeon during a bowel resection. Fully present, fully competent. The kind of work where you cannot space out, where a stranger's life is partly in your hands. And somewhere around 3 in the morning, scrubbing out, it hit me how absurd it was. That this was the job my family considered something I could just shuffle around. That my hands, which had been inside a person's open abdomen that night, were the hands they pictured tying ribbons on welcome bags. The week after the call, I told myself I was overreacting. I went back and forth. Maybe it would be nice. Maybe I'd feel close to them for once. Maybe being needed, even like this, was better than being invisible. I almost talked myself into it. I came so close. What stopped me was the email. There's a family email thread, an actual email chain my mother started years ago for important family business, which mostly means forwarded chain letters and complaints. About 10 days after the call, I opened it because I saw the subject line, Cassidy's wedding week, rolls. And there it was, in my mother's chipper bullet points, sent to my aunt, my uncle, 3 cousins, Brett's mother, and Cassidy herself. It said, under my name, Delia, so generous, has happily volunteered to be our week of coordinator. She'll handle vendor check-in, rehearsal dinner setup, welcome bags, flower girl wrangling, and the master timeline. Direct all logistics questions to her so Cassidy can relax and be a beautiful bride. Happily volunteered. So generous. There was even a little tasks and deadlines table, the kind I make at work, except this one had my name in every other row. A cousin had already replied, Delia, you're an angel. Brett's mother had replied, what a wonderful family you have. I read it standing in my kitchen, and I felt something I'd never quite felt before. Not the hot guilt this time. Something cold and clear and almost calm. My mother hadn't just decided for me. She'd put it in writing, to everyone, and she dressed it up as my own idea, so that the moment I said no, I wouldn't just be declining. I'd be revealed as a liar who backed out. She'd built me a cage and labeled it generosity. I called my best friend Rosalind that night. Roz is a paramedic, which means she has even less patience for nonsense than I do, and she listened to me read the whole email out loud without saying a word until I finished. Okay, she said. First, that's not a request. That's a conscription. Second, she's not just ignoring your boundary, she's deleting it and replacing it with a press release. The genius of it is that now, if you say no, the whole family sees you as the flake who abandoned the bride. She's made your silence into a contract. I said I knew, but I didn't know what to do about it. If I refused now, I'd be the villain. If I sent a correction email, I'd start a war on a thread with Brett's mother on it, which would embarrass Cassidy, which would somehow become my fault. And Roz said the thing that flipped a switch in me. Delia, here's what you do. You don't argue. You don't send a clarifying email and get dragged into a 40-message fight where you slowly look crazier. You correct it once, cleanly on the record, to the people who matter, and then you make yourself impossible to draft. You stop being available. They can only put you in the program if you show up to the theater. She was right. The arguing was the trap. The arguing was how they always won. By wearing me down across 100 reasonable-sounding messages until I was too tired to keep saying no, I didn't need to win the argument. I needed to not be there. So I did 2 things, and I did them in the right order, because I'd been burned enough times to know that how you do a thing matters as much as what you do. The first thing I did, the very next morning, was put my no in writing, plainly to the only 2 people who actually had standing, my mother and my sister. Not the whole thread, not the audience, just them. I texted both of them in the same message, and I kept it short because I'd learned that the longer I explain, the more handholds I give them. I wrote, Mom, Cassidy, I saw the wedding rolls email. I need to be clear because there's been a misunderstanding. I never agreed to be the week of coordinator, and I'm not able to do it. It's a full-time professional job, and I can't take a week of unpaid leave from the hospital for it. I'd suggest hiring a day of coordinator. They're worth every penny. I love you both, and I want Cassidy's day to be perfect, which is exactly why it shouldn't depend on me. I'm telling you now in March, so there's plenty of time to plan. Please update the family that I'm not the coordinator. I read it 4 times. I made sure there was nothing in it they could twist into a hook. No, I'm so sorry, because I wasn't, and sorry is the thread they pull. No, maybe I could do a little, because a little becomes everything. Just clean and early and on the record. Then I sent it, and I put the phone face down, and I went and took a shower so I couldn't watch the dots appear. The response was exactly what I expected. My mother called 4 times. When I didn't pick up, she sent paragraphs. How could I do this to my sister? How embarrassing it would be to tell everyone. How I'd always been difficult, even as a child. How Cassidy had been bragging that her capable big sister was handling everything. How Brett's family would think we were the kind of people who couldn't keep our word. Cassidy sent one text, and it was just, "Wow, okay, nice to know where I rank." And here's the part I'm proudest of, because the old me would have folded right there. The old me would have read, "Nice to know where I rank," and called immediately, crying, promising I'd find a way, I'd make it work, I'd figure out the shifts. That one line was engineered to do exactly that. Instead, I texted back, once, "I love you and I'll be at your wedding as a guest. Genuinely happy for you. I'm just not the staff. A coordinator will do it better than I could anyway. Send me the registry link." And then I muted the thread. Not blocked. Not yet. Muted. So I couldn't be reeled in by the next message and the next. Because I'd already booked the other thing. That cold, clear night after I read the email, before I'd even talked to Roz, I'd opened my laptop and looked at flights. Not anywhere fancy. I'd always wanted to see the coast of Maine, the real one, the cold, rocky one with the lighthouses and the lobster shacks and the fog, the opposite in every way of a Sonoma vineyard in June. I found a little inn on a peninsula near Acadia, a room with a view of the water, the kind of place where the Wi-Fi is bad and that's the point. I booked it for the exact week of the wedding. Round trip, Sacramento to Bangor, with a rental car. I'd never spent money on myself like that. My hand actually shook, clicking confirm. And then a strange thing happened. I felt light. For the first time in months, I felt light. I didn't tell anyone except Roz. I let the family stew in their assumption for a while, partly because I was tired and partly because, I'll be honest, I was curious whether anyone would actually hear what I'd said. My mother eventually went quiet, which I mistook for acceptance. It wasn't acceptance. It was her deciding that if she just acted like the no never happened, I'd cave at the last minute. She kept forwarding me wedding logistics, vendor contact sheets, a welcome bag spreadsheet, for when you have a sec. I didn't respond to any of it. Every unanswered email was a brick in a wall I was building. As the wedding got closer, the messages picked back up, friendlier now. Almost normal, as if we'd never fought. As if I'd never said no. Can't wait to see you next week. The vineyard is going to be magical. A cousin texted asking what time I'd be there Wednesday to start setup. I didn't answer her either. I was learning that you don't owe a response to a question built on a lie. The question, what time Wednesday, assumed a yes I'd never given. Answering it even to say no was stepping back onto their stage. I flew to Maine on the Tuesday before the wedding. I want to tell you what that week was actually like, because the contrast is the whole point. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, the Thursday, the day my family had me penciled in to be setting tables and chasing flower girls 3,000 miles away, I woke up in a creaky bed under a quilt, the sound of a foghorn. I made coffee in a little kitchenette and drank it on a porch looking at gray water. I drove down a 2-lane road to a shack with a hand-painted sign and ate a lobster roll at 11 in the morning with butter running down my wrist and nobody needing anything from me. I bought a flannel I didn't need. I read most of a paperback on the rocks while the tide came in. I did not look at my phone, which was in airplane mode in the glove box, until that evening. When I turned it on, it nearly vibrated off the nightstand. The first wave was confusion. My mother, mid-afternoon their time, "Delia, where are you? The vendors are here and nobody knows where the linens go. Call me." Then, "Delia, this isn't funny. The rehearsal is in 2 hours and we have no point person. Where are you?" Then a missed call. Then 4. I scrolled with this strange flat feeling, like watching weather happen to someone else's town. Because what I'd been quietly counting on, what I knew in my bones would happen, was happening. They'd planned the entire week around a coordinator who didn't exist. They'd told the vendors to ask Delia. They'd written my name on the timeline. They'd believed, right up until Thursday afternoon, that I would materialize and hold it all together for free because I always had. And I wasn't coming. The texts got worse as the evening went on. The rehearsal dinner, it turned out, had no one to receive the catering, so the food sat. The welcome bags, 60 of them, were in boxes in my mother's hotel room unassembled because that was Delia's task. The Vineyard's day of staff, the ones the venue does provide, had been told the family was bringing their own coordinator, so they hadn't planned coverage. Brett's mother, the useless one, had apparently asked, pointedly in front of everyone, where exactly this famous coordinator was. My mother had had to say I was running late. Then, stuck in traffic. Then, when traffic stops being plausible at hour 3, nothing. Cassidy called 11 times. Cassidy texted things I won't repeat all of, but the gist escalated from, "Are you seriously doing this?" to, "You've wind my rehearsal," to, finally, near midnight her time, something that actually made me set the phone down for a minute. "I get it now. You'd rather I fail than help me. You've always been jealous. I'm not going to pretend that one didn't reach me. It did. I sat on that creaky bed in Maine and I cried a little, not because I thought she was right, but because some part of me wished she were the sister who would have wanted me at her wedding as a person instead of needing me there as a function. I let myself feel it, and then I did the math. The real math. The math that matters. I had not ruined anything. I had declined to be unpaid labor, in writing, in March, 3.5 months in advance, with a recommendation to hire a professional. Everything that was falling apart because they'd ignored a clearly stated no and gambled my whole week on a fantasy. That's not me ruining her rehearsal. That's the bill coming due for treating a person like a tool. I wrote my mother one message. Just her. I wrote, "I told both of you in March, in writing, that I wasn't the coordinator and that you should hire one. I'm sorry it's chaotic tonight. A day of coordinator can still be booked last minute. The venue will have referrals. I hope tomorrow is beautiful for Cassidy. I won't be reachable. I'm out of town." And then I turned the phone back to airplane mode, and I slept better than I had in 2 years. The wedding happened. Of course it happened. Weddings always happen, even messy ones. From what I pieced together later, the day itself was salvaged by the venue's emergency staff and a panicked last-minute coordinator that Brett's mother, in the end, paid for out of her own pocket, which I understand became its own quiet scandal on my mother's side, because it meant Brett's family now had proof that our family couldn't be relied on for the one thing we promised to handle. The welcome bags never got assembled. The rehearsal dinner ran 2 hours late and cold. Cassidy walked down the aisle, and I'm told she was beautiful, and I'm told she cried, and I genuinely hope they were happy tears, at least partly. I spent that Saturday, the wedding day, on a whale watch out of Bar Harbor. I stood on the deck of a boat in the wind and watched a humpback breach, maybe 100 yards off the bow, this enormous, impossible thing rising out of the cold water and crashing back down, and a boat full of strangers gasped together, and I gasped with them. And for a few seconds, I forgot I had a family at all. I took a photo, not of myself, of the water where the whale had been, all churn and spray and gray ocean to the horizon. When I got back to cell range that evening, I did one last thing. I opened the family thread, the big one, the one with everyone on it, the one where months ago my mother had announced that I had happily volunteered. I didn't read the dozens of messages waiting. I posted the photo of the empty churning sea, and under it I wrote, "I told you in March I wasn't the coordinator. I meant it. Wishing Cassidy a wonderful marriage." And then I left the group. Not muted. Left. The little gray Delia has left the conversation. I want to tell you the rest landed exactly the way it should, but life is messier than that, and I think you deserve the honest version. When I flew home, I blocked my mother's number for a while, not forever, just long enough to not be available for the after-action campaign I knew was coming. The campaign came anyway, routed through relatives. An aunt called to tell me I'd humiliated the family. A cousin sent a long message about how I'd chosen the most hurtful possible way to make a point, which is rich, considering the most hurtful possible way would have been showing up Thursday, doing half of it, and then collapsing. I had given them 3.5 months of notice. They keep leaving that part out. But here's what also happened, the part that surprised me. About 2 weeks after the wedding, Brett's mother, the useless one, the one I'd never had a real conversation with, sent me a message through Facebook. She said she'd heard there'd been a misunderstanding about who was running the wedding. And then she said something I've thought about 100 times since. She said, "For what it's worth, I run a business, and I'd never ask an employee to do for free what I'd have to pay a stranger thousands to do. I'm sorry your family did that to you. You were right to say no." I cried at my kitchen counter reading it in a completely different way than I'd cried in Maine. Cassidy and I didn't speak for almost 6 months. Then, in December, she called me. She didn't fully apologize, not in the way movies promise, but she said something close. She said the marriage was good, Brett was good, but the wedding had taught her things about our mother she was only now starting to see. She said, quietly, "I think Mom did to me what she did to you, just from the other side. She made me think you abandoned me, when really she'd just sold a promise she had no right to make." It wasn't everything, but it was the first time in our lives my little sister had looked at the machine we both grew up inside and named a single gear of it out loud. I'll take it. We're rebuilding, slowly, on terms that are actually ours. My mother and I are not close now, and I've made a kind of peace with that I never thought I could. We're polite. I see her at the holidays for a few hours, and I leave before the asks start. I don't pick up every time she calls anymore. The world did not end. The earth did not open. It turns out the sky stays where it is even when you stop holding it up for everyone else. I think about that baby shower photo sometimes. The one I wasn't in, the 22 faces I'd fed, and the framed evidence that I didn't count. And then I think about a different photo, the one on my phone, the empty gray sea off the coast of Maine where a whale had just been and was already gone, and how I'm not in that one either, and how that's the whole difference. I wasn't in the first picture because they cropped me out. I'm not in the second one because I was the one holding the camera, on a boat I chose, on an ocean I paid for, on a day that belonged to nobody but me. If there's anything I want you to take from this, it's this. Saying no is not the same as starting a war. The war was already happening. You were just losing it quietly for years, by being too kind to make it loud. A boundary is not a punishment you inflict on people who love you. It's the line you draw so you can find out whether they ever did. The thing nobody warned me about is how long you can lose a fight without ever knowing you're in one. For years, I thought I was being a good daughter, a good sister, the dependable one. What I was actually doing was teaching every person in my family that my time was free, that my no was a soft thing they could talk around, that the worst I'd ever do was sigh and comply. Cassidy didn't decide to use me at the wedding out of nowhere. She'd watched her mother do it her whole life, at the baby shower, at every holiday, and she'd learned the lesson perfectly. Delia Benz. Cause and effect. I built the trap with my own kindness, one swallowed objection at a time, and then I was shocked to find myself inside it. What broke the pattern wasn't anger, even though I had plenty. Anger alone would have just made me send a furious email and get dragged into a 40-message war I'd lose. What actually saved me was thinking clearly before I acted. Roz handed me the key when she said, "Don't argue, just stop being available," and the moment I understood the difference between winning the fight and leaving the room, everything changed. I put my no in writing, early, clean, to the only two people who mattered, and then I refused to keep relitigating it. That wasn't coldness. That was the smartest thing I have ever done in my own defense. But knowing the right move and doing it are two different countries, and the bridge between them is the hardest thing of all. It took everything I had not to call Cassidy back when she texted, "Nice to know where I rank." It took everything not to fold when my mother called 4 times in a row. Holding a boundary while someone you love is screaming at you that you're cruel, that you're jealous, that you've ruined everything, that is not a feeling, that is a discipline. You hold it the way I hold steady at a surgical table on no sleep. You decide once that the line matters, and then you simply do not move, even when your whole body is begging you to. Here is what I tell anyone who recognizes themselves in this. Being good to people cannot mean letting them treat you as a thing. Real decency includes deciding what you will and won't accept and saying it out loud in time for everyone to plan around it. Use your head before your heart gets ambushed, because manipulation only works in the fog. And then find the spine to stand in your own decision while the storm tells you you're a monster for having one. I'm not in the photo over my mother's mantle, and I'm not in the photo of the empty Maine sea, and only one of those absences was ever a wound. The whale was already gone by the time I raised my phone. I photographed the place where something enormous had been and chosen to leave. That's me now. Gone from the frame by my own hand, finally free.